Hi there, it's Mr. Clark. Welcome to lesson JAZ.2.3 on chord extensions. It is time to dive into the world of beyond seventh chords. And a lot of times, if you look at a advanced or any sort of jazz chart, you might see ninths, 11s, 13s. What do all these mean? Why are there so many parentheses and flats and sharps? Let's talk about it, break it down. So just as you can take a triad, 1, 3, 5, and add on a seventh, there's no reason to stop there. You could add on a fifth note. That would be a ninth, another note, an 11th, 13th. If you tried to add a 15th, oh wait, that's just a C again. That's just the root 2 octaves up. So that's why we stop at 13. So if you add on a 9th, 11th, or 13th, it could be diatonic in the scale of the key, or it could be chromatic. So you could have a regular 9, flat 9 or sharp 9, an 11 or a sharp 11, natural 13 or a flat 13. So let's go through and talk about this a little bit. So isn't a ninth just the same as a second? Technically, yes, they're octave equivalent, but if you have a 9 in your chord, that implies that there's also a 3rd, 5th, and 7th present. So it makes sense to stack it on top. If you just had a 2, sometimes you'll see in like more popular music symbol add 2, which would be 1, 2, and 5, or I guess that would more be a sus2. And that implies a second instead of a third. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a ninth, which implies it's going to be higher up in the structure and also implies the existence of those lower chord tones. We don't have flat 11. That's not an option because that would be the same as your third. That's already a chord tone. 11 implies the existence of a third. A sus chord uses a fourth, so we already have that option. 1, 4, and 5. So if you have an 11th, that also implies the existence of a third, and that's why it's a different thing. Sharp 11 sounds the same as sharp 4 or flat 5, but a sharp 11 implies that there's also a perfect fifth in the chord, so that's going to be crunchy. If you just had a sharp 4, then that wouldn't say anything about there being a fifth or not. And in particular, if you have like a C7 flat 5, then that's C, E, G flat, B flat. There's no perfect fifth. There's no G in there. But if you had a C7 sharp 11, then that would be C, E, G, B flat, and then we have our F sharp. So you have that F sharp and the G. That makes the chord much crunchier. Flat 13 implies that there's going to be a perfect fifth. 13 implies some sort of chordal seventh. If you just did the octave equivalent, said that was a sixth, then there's not going to be a seventh. Our C major 6, our C minor 6, they don't have chordal sevenths in them. And then sharp 13 isn't a possibility because that's going to be equivalent to flat 7, which more likely than not is already going to be in the chord. So that's just not something that you really see. So let's go through some examples. So here we have a fairly comprehensive list of the types of extensions that you're going to see in the wild. Not all extensions really fit on all chords, and sometimes that's for reasons of practicality, sometimes it's just aesthetics, like people just don't use certain combinations. So we commonly only see certain extensions on certain types of bass 7th chord. So here, our bass is a major 7 chord. You'll see a regular 9, natural 9, you'll see a sharp 11, and you'll see a 13. And that's about it. So like, here's your major 9. You could theoretically put a flat 9 on top of that. But you just don't. You could theoretically put a sharp 9 on top of it. But again, like, you just don't see that. And since we're trying to describe what actually happens, we're not going to worry too much about it. But if for some reason you need a C major 9, or C major with a sharp 9, then, like, no one's stopping you. Like, we could figure out what this means. You'd have a C major 7 chord, I'd probably write C major 7 with a sharp 9 just for added clarity, and that would be C, E, G, B, and then D sharp. Possible, not likely to be found in the wild. Over here, you can add any of our possible extensions to a dominant 7th chord. Dominant 7, go wild, anything you want, flat 9, natural 9, sharp 11, flat 13, 13. All valid. Pretty much anything on a sus chord, flat 9, 9, sharp 9. You don't really see 11ths on sus chords because you already have the 4. So like what would you do with an 11th? But you do have flat 13 and 13. I guess with a dominant 7 chord, you don't really see a regular 11, just sharp 11. Interesting. C minor 9, you can have, or C minor 7, you can add a regular 9. You can add regular 11 or sharp 11, flat 13 or 13. You start with your minor 7 flat 5 chord, half diminished chord. You can put on a regular 9, regular 11, flat 13. And I'd like to point out that these chord symbols sometimes aren't exactly equivalent across the row. So like here, your C major 9, it's just like, it's going to be a major 7 with a 9th stacked on top. Here, it's a C major 7 with a sharp 11. So there's no 9th implied, just an 11th. Here, 13. 13 implies 9th, 7th, doesn't imply 11th necessarily. Over here, your C dominant 9, which is a C dominant 7 with a natural 9 on top. Everywhere else, it's C7 with whatever you're adding in parentheses. C13 is also assumed. Over here, C9 sus. Everything else is C7 with the alteration sus, except C13. So your 9ths and 13ths often, if they're the natural 9, natural 13, anything with a sharper flat on it, you're usually going to see parentheses. So over here, C minor 9. This one's a little bit different because you take your C minor 9 and you just adjust the 5th. C minor 11th, you adjust the 5th. C minor 7, but with a flat 5 and a flat 13. So you could also look and say, well, that's the same as C minor 7. Oh no, C minor 7 flat 13, and then you add the flat 5th. So yeah. And the reason we have this kind of more complicated thing is because they don't do half diminished 7 symbol. For better or for worse, C diminished 9, C diminished 11, C diminished 7, flat 13. And again, natural 9, natural 11 don't need any parentheses. Here we have the flat 13, so we do. So some notes as we go through this. Diatonic extensions, like we've been talking about, generally have simpler chord labels. If you have chromatic extensions, you need those parentheses. It starts getting longer, starts looking more confusing. Not up here, but you can put extensions on 6th chords, and specifically, you can only put a 9th. And the way you'd write this, you have your C major 6, 9, your C minor 6, 9, and you can also have a C9 with a flat 6. So now that we add that 9 to confirm, like C's the root, we can let it be a little crunchier in the middle there. So all extensions imply root 3rd, 5th, 7th. If you have a 9th, then you also have all of that. If you have an 11th, you also have all of that. A 13th implies a 9th, but not an 11th, plus, all of your normal stuff. You can have multiple extensions on a bass 7th chord. So if I have a C7, maybe I want to stack a flat 9, a sharp 11, and a flat 13 up there, because why not? You can also have flat 5 or sharp 5, these alterations of the 5th with any allowable extensions. So if I want a C7 sharp 11, I can also slap on a sharp 5 there. If I want a C minor 7 flat 9, which, dig it, love it, yes, I want a C minor 7 flat 9, you could also slap a flat 5 on there if you want to make it slightly less cool. But basically, as long as it's clear what notes you want in your chord, there's a way to write it. So that's what we got going on here, and I'll see you next time to talk about where to put all of these chord tones.